Hey friends, welcome back to the Naked Podcast. I am chatting with my old friend Sarah Heath, who is a former pastor, and she talks about the transition from moving from that vocation to something different, what it looked like to move from burnout and find the courage in the quiet moments in rebuilding something from basically the ground up, and how fixing her Airstream, which has been such a parallel to her own healing, has been just a beautiful journey. She talks about learning to trust her own intuition and how to let go, and how the surprise of creativity showing up in the middle of so much of a mess. It's such an honest, open, vulnerable, hopeful conversation. And I think it's just a beautiful reminder that we're never starting from scratch, from ground zero. We are just starting from a new experience. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I believe that you will too. I hope you find some inspiration for your own journey as you listen to Sarah. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Season 2 of The Naked Podcast, a space where ordinary people, just like you and me, share the moments that changed everything. This podcast was inspired by a conversation I had with my grandma, who once said, "If more of us shared our stories, fewer of us would feel alone." And that's exactly what we do here. On Naked, we talk about all the things, the wins, the losses, the growth, and the struggles. These are raw, unfiltered conversations about the parts we rarely talk about but deeply connect us. We are grateful you're here as we open up about the moments that shaped us. This is the Naked Podcast. Perfect. All right. Well, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Janelle. I am the host of the Naked Podcast, and I am beyond thrilled to have my friend Sarah from California join me. It has been a long time since we've actually been in the same place together, and I was kind of reminiscing about when we met, and I believe it was a 2-day with Rob Bell. Yeah. So much has happened in your life. I feel like I just get glimpses of what's going on in your world through like Instagram. Like, oh my gosh, what is happening? I can see so much has changed. And I was just delighted when you're like, yeah, I'll be in the podcast. Because I'm so interested to know the time in your life when everything changed. And maybe it's of the recent years, or maybe it's from years way gone like past. But I'm just super excited to have you here. So thank you for joining me and for taking the time.
Yeah, of course. It's such an honor to be here. Yeah, we met. I think it was your husband had done a 2-day before, and then I will say that all of the guys that were on that trip, they just talked about their spouses, like not in that like creepy like evangelical way of like I'm a super hot wife, but just like no, like you're actually really gonna like my wife. Like I hung out with all the dudes and it was great. My friend Sarah and I were like the girls with all the dudes that were hanging out, but there was this like really cool reality that then we met all the wives and they were as cool as they were advertised.
That's cool.
So
it was
great.
such like a great weekend, and actually interesting enough, Greg and I talked about that weekend on a podcast that we recorded a couple of days ago. So just like so much reminiscing.
I saw the video because I was like, who is this ponytailed man? I know that he has the bun. I've seen it before, but
yeah, it's been a while since we've seen you. So it's crazy how, yeah, life just kind of takes us on all these adventures. And I'm just so excited to hear about what's happening. But before we get into that, what are you drinking today?
yeah. Well, great question. So I don't drink alcohol much during the weekdays. It's kind of like the last. I'm a runner who runs with a lot of brewery running clubs. And so I noticed that I wasn't drinking a lot, but I was drinking often, if that makes sense. And I was like, you know what? That's probably it's probably not the best way to spend my time. Not that there's anything wrong with if you're have a drink at the end of the day, kind of girly or boy or whatever. But I decided, since today I have another friend coming in town and she's bringing me fancy wines, that today is like, it's Tuesday, but it might be Friday. So I decided that in order to like really, I am drinking a prickly pear tequila.
Wow,
seltzer.
You're fancy.
So yes, it is from a company called High Noon. They're local to this area, although they're all over the place now. And then I would just put a little lime in there, so I feel a little fancy. That's what I'm drinking.
That might be the fanciest drink to date on the Naked Podcast. I think it is actually.
Okay, I will admit to being a little bit nervous about this selection because your husband and I, whenever we've met up, he like has made fancy drinks, and I was like, I can't be rolling up with like a, I don't know what. I can't roll up with a White Claw. I mean, I never would, but as a Canadian, like I just
can't do it. He'd be so proud of you. I'm not fancy at all. I literally have lime and mint because it's so hot here. I'm like, I just need something refreshing. and water. That's it. It's not too fancy.
Here we go.
Well, before we bump it,
That sounds actually really good. I
I
love
know,
mint
right? And
in
it's hard to
anything.
find here. And so I found it the other
Anything.
day. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting mint. And I've been putting it in salads and I'm putting it in my drink now. And it's like, a little taste of home. So nice.
I keep killing it. So that's the thing about mint because I have full sun
Okay.
patio and I just kill mint because I keep thinking I'm going to be able to like be a farmer in my mind, but I'm
I
not.
have the
I'm not a
same
farmer.
problem. I have this
It's not
idea that I
me.
am like an absolute gardener at heart. And I have grown herbs like probably the last 15 years. I have reattempted to grow herbs. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so beautiful. I'm going to have a wall. And they all die. And so I have just realized that I can't. And it's too bad.
Hmm.
I either give them too much water, too much sun, or they're too
It's
dry. I
fine.
don't know. I just can't figure out.
Listen, at our age, we just kind
Yeah.
of are starting to know who we are. Like, I'm the girl who likes the idea of birds, but I don't actually like birds. Like, I recognize, like, I like art that has birds in it. I like the idea of birds, but do I
You don't
actually?
actually
I don't
want to have a
actually like
bird in your
birds.
house. No, that's okay. We're just figuring ourselves out.
No,
No.
nor do I want one. Listen, just like learning
Right?
and growing. This is what this
Especially I
season
feel
is
like
about.
this season in life, it's like you give yourself the permission to be like, yeah, I just don't really like that. Where I think in our younger years, we're just trying to like figure out how we can hone in that skill. And now it's just like, I'm in my 40s and
Hmm.
I'm not
I'm
into
not into
it.
it.
It turns out I don't want to have a bird.
Maybe after like maybe one day I will be like my whole family can garden, and I joke around that they're all farmers, and then there's me, and so I have like a bit of a black thumb. Like I things will like beautiful things don't like I have a lot of succulents. If you notice in my home, there's lots of like cacti, and this part of being in California. And they do okay, but they don't always flourish. But I do have this one area of my home, the only area of my home that has shade, and those things are like killing it, but I can't really bring them out. I feel like I should have
You're like,
prepared and
these are my
like placed
plants. I have a
them
green thumb.
for a recording. So you would think, yeah, that girl knows what
Yeah.
she's doing. She has her
Look
shit
at her
together.
plants.
Look
They're
at her
still alive.
plants.
No, I have a problem with it. I think
Mm-hmm.
I should actually have like a subscription to plants where it's like they just replenish them. Like, we know that's only going to last about 6 to 8 weeks, if at max. So they just like drop off new plants, and then the kids are always
100%.
like, "Oh my god, your plants are doing so good." I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
We need to write this down. Like, it's an exchange
Yes,
program.
this is a
This is a great
really good
idea.
idea because those who do have the green thumb could actually just like you could be swapping it out with them, and they could just bring them back to life. And then yeah,
Yeah.
this is brilliant. New
Yeah.
business idea. Um, I like that where we're going with this. Before we get into this, Sarah, maybe you can tell people who you are and a little bit about your life, just so
Sure.
our listeners know who they're listening to.
Yeah. So my name is Sarah Heath. I'm originally Canadian. I was born in Ontario. Well, I was born in Newfoundland, raised in Ontario until I was 14. And then I moved to Mississippi, like all people do. Um, and in Mississippi, I kind of really jumped into the evangelical world for a while, as well as I was Methodist growing up. And then I went to college in Mississippi, studied biology. This all makes sense
Mm-hmm.
later and we'll play into, I'm not going to give you all the history, but I ended up um, I was part of a youth group and just church mattered so much to me. And so when I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, I ended up going to Duke Divinity School and studying and getting my master's in divinity. Later went on to come out to California as a United Methodist. I wasn't a pastor yet. I was like a local pastor. Ended up getting ordained in the United Methodist Church out here. I'm still ordained, which is why Rev Sarah Heath is my handles everywhere. And I served as a local pastor, first in youth ministry, then in youth and college ministry. Then the service I had created at one church grew, and the bishop was like, "Hey, what if you were a preaching pastor?" And I thought, I don't know about that. But I ended up becoming a campus minister pastor. That's when I met your husband. I was in the throngs of being like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I still did it for years after that. And then I ended up just having a really cool experience of having a church that was over 100 years old in a city that I loved. They asked me to come and revitalize it. And for 5 years, we just did incredible work together. Very progressive, very inclusive, just a really
Mm-hmm.
cool space in the heart of Orange County, which is a very conservative area. And so we had this really unique thing, and it absolutely killed me. Just destroyed any bit of self. Like I was going 100 miles a minute. I was flipping the building, which is something that has always been a big part of my life. I love to restore. I love design. My house is a mess today, so I kind of feel a little bit like I should almost block it, but space really matters to me. And I just really, the design of the space was awesome. I love doing that. I love designing the community and figuring out ways to be creative in that, but I just never got any backup or help. And the community itself were incredible people, but they were all, a lot of them were in the deconstruction phase, or they were members who had been there a really long time and they were grieving sort of the loss of what they knew to be faith. And so it was just a constant every week of like hoping that whatever you were throwing at the wall would stick. The upper echelon folks were, some were supportive by word, but not very supportive in action. And some of them tried really hard to be supportive, but it grew and grew. And then COVID hit, and I kind of had a realization like I also had a really big birthday coming, and I was like, this is not what I want the next part of my life to look like. I had always wanted to be married. I'd always wanted to have kids. I'd always wanted to sort of have it all. And I realized my life was my work. I was known by that. I spoke on stages. I wrote books. I did all that. And every moment it seemed like that was going to take off, something would happen. And I really just sort of felt like a local church pastor that was massively burning out. I loved my community so much that I just didn't want to do that to them or myself. And so through a long series of things that happened, I had a friend really challenge me. He found a 1973 Airstream that I love Airstreams. It's like the weirdest,
I love it.
like niche love. Yeah, it's weird because I didn't grow up with them. I stayed in one once, but I like late at night, I would look, I'm processing all of that as I like working on this new book idea, but like why that? And I think for me, it's this idea of bringing your home with you. As someone who comes from a Canadian and British family, but I moved to the South where we didn't have any family. I love people. I love making community, and the idea that I could create a space that came with me was just, I don't know, that was just a neat idea. So my friend found this Airstream, and long story short, I found out later that a group of my friends had been fundraising for me to be able to buy an Airstream. And there was a really pivotal conversation that happened in the woods. A friend of mine had passed away, and it was her husband that found this Airstream. And he basically said, look, like, we don't live forever. I think we learned that. Like, you got to decide what you want. And he said, you've lived your life for everyone else and you're risk averse. What are you going to do? And so I bought the Airstream from him. Then I drove it across the country, and I drove it to a place that I loved, Bend, Oregon. And this was in 2021 and, or 2021. I let my church know that I was not going to be pastoring there anymore because the upper people were supposed to let them know, and they just never did. And so I was like, hey, like, it's coming up to the time when I'm leaving. We should probably let them know that. And it was they honored me, and it was such a great, it was a great leaving in some ways. And I spent 3 months at that time just grieving and healing and being with this Airstream. And that has been the project that has grounded me. And I work on it almost every weekend. And there's lots of stories around that. And that kind of catches you up to about, while I was doing that, people kept calling me, asking me if I would coach them. And I was like, I need you to understand, like, I live in my friend's basement and I have a falling apart Airstream that belonged to a murderer.
Oh my gosh.
What about that says that's the life that I want to live? I'm in my 40s and I'm not married. Like, what about this? It's like your ideal, that girl's got it together. But what I realized is, like, I have this unique skill, and of really helping people make their dreams kind of come alive, like help them sort of discerning questions, all the things I did as a pastor. And so I ended up, because I'm, women, and we often feel like we have to get the credential. So I went out and got the credential. I actually like did the hardest course to be a coach and started coaching folks. Like from my trailer. There were times I was like full dicky overalls, like coaching church staff teams. Like, how do we do this thing? Real professional. But I was speaking at events still, which was really interesting because I thought that was going to be something that I had to let go of. And then I moved back, and I live in a really expensive area. And so it was really hard to sustain because I don't love the self, like I don't love selling myself. So I ended up really sort of like taking a little bit to sort of think about like, all right, I love this work. And I love coaching. What if I did that on staff? So I coached a coffee company for a year on staff and also like helped them with their leadership stuff and their admin stuff. It was
Wow.
very much a great experience. People that own it are awesome. But it was also like a church experience because it was a startup. So it was a lot of like, oh,
Yeah.
everyone does everything. And my brain was like, I cannot. And so I left that position. And then a friend posted this job working for the United Way, United to End Homelessness, an organization that I had really
Hmm.
believed in. And they hired me. And within a year, I got promoted to be the narrative strategist. So I am the associate director of narrative strategy and community engagement. So I work in the idea of like shifting people's
Wow.
narratives. So using all those skills, those books I wrote in the past, and also just sort of coming up with marketing ideas and like it's a wild ride. So that's me.
Wow.
That's a lot. That was like that was just like a quick, that's who I
That's
am.
amazing. There's been so much that's unfolded since we last chatted. Um, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I did see your Airstream and I was like, that is the coolest thing. Like how amazing to be like taking all your creativity and taking a small space and turning it into something that's just specifically the way that you want it and has the feel that you want. I think I've
Mm-hmm.
been watching that and I'm like, it's really cool to see that you're able to take the time that maybe would have years ago you wouldn't have had 5 minutes to even put towards something like that. And now you have like the weekends, which anybody who's been in the
No.
pastoring worlds knows that weekends is like those are work days. Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely feel like one of the things that I has become really clear to me is like I've
Mm.
learned so much from this air. Her
I
name's
love it.
Gidget, the Airstream. um, and it's like the people that have come into my life because I had no business working on that. Like, I am a handy person. I can fix your furniture. I'm an IKEA goddess. But if you are like, was I a metal worker? No, I was not. Was I a metal fabricator? Also, no. Did I know about wheels or tires? Nope, sure didn't. But what I did have was
Mm.
audacity, and so I every along the way, it's been wild. You know, like I have met the exact right person for that
Mm.
next project
Wow.
every time. And so it was like an incredible journey. Like even when I first got her, I thought I was just going to be like painting a few walls. I was going to leave the regular
No.
layout. No, I had an expert come in and he's like, "You're taking this baby all the way to the studs. Like you are de-riveting this whole thing." And I just still remember standing there. He's like, "I don't know why you bought this." And then I told him the story of my friend passing away, and he was like, "This is your Airstream." He's like, "You need to fix this." And I was like, "All right." So that has
Oh.
been, this like I met a guy who works on it with me almost every week. He's in his
Oh,
60s and he has
cool.
become one of my best friends. And it has been this ongoing, beautiful story. And I have like hours of footage that I haven't
Wow.
done anything with. Um, that's just us working and the conversations we have. Sometimes it's on time lapse and sometimes it's just
That's
capturing our
so cool.
conversations. So some point there will be something done with it. For right now, it just feels like I have to live
Yeah.
into it. So
Wow. That's crazy. Like what an adventure you lived like all over Canada and into US and then your life and yeah, it just sounds like it's just been such a ride to be where you are now.
it has
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
such a ride.
So when I
Absolutely.
when
Yeah.
I first messaged you and I was like, okay, I have
Yeah.
this podcast where I asked this one question. Is there a time in your life when everything changed? Were you like, oh my gosh, like which one?
Yeah. You know what? Actually, I had this very clear moment. Um, and that, well, I guess they kind of go together. There's two moments. I'm cheating. But um, when I I hadn't figured out exactly if I was going to take the Airstream or not. Again, there was just all this grief and stuff that I hadn't processed because the person who passed away, we were in the same field. She was really
Mm.
well known. Um, so a lot of the public were grieving. She's like this best-selling author, and so there was this like sense of like, and I was in her home, and there's all these pictures of her, and I'm just feeling all these like feelings. And then I hadn't seen my family in 8 months because of COVID, and there they
Mm.
are, the people I love the most. And I found out people had been raising money, so there's all this pressure. And I also knew like if I got this Airstream, there was nowhere in California I could put it. like, because the windows are so expensive, and if they like the church I was at was fairly urban, and like there would be a risk of the windows being broken and things like that. And so I also knew like one of my hopes and dreams was to be partnered. And I was like, what guy is going to want to hang out with me on my weekends when I'm working on this thing? Like there was all these like things in my head, right? But also like, I think the real notion of it was like, if I choose this thing, my entire life will be different. I know it will. I'm choosing this. I'm going to have to say yes to this and no to so much to say yes to this. No to using my money for travel. No to like, right? Like this thing is a money pit. This is a money pit. I'm buying a boat. Like everyone jokes, it's, you know, the best day is the day you get a boat, and the second best day is the day you sell it. I just, and I didn't know what to do, and I basically had like this massive panic attack about it, and I just missed my family. I remember weeping, which is illegal in Canada, right? We're not allowed to openly weep, but I remember weeping at lunch with my parents, and they're just like, I don't know, because I had this whole understanding that this career I had built a platform. People loved me. The queer community felt loved by me, which was such an honor. Like I had the absolute unicorn where I had all 6 living generations worshiping together. That never happens. I had a trans worship leader. I had everything that you like check the boxes of progressive pastor. I had a book deal. I had all these things, and I was miserable. And I was like, what's wrong with me that I can't love this life? And I was sitting with my parents. I just missed them and such a deep part of me. And I'm weeping, and they're like, what is wrong? And I was like, I don't know. But I knew like this was going to be a pivotal moment. So I was staying at my friend's house, and my parents were staying at a hotel, and I couldn't sleep at his house. My friend who had purchased the Airstream. There was just something inside of me. And I knew, he kind of said, look, how about tomorrow, either you like pick up the Airstream, you come, we'll fill out the paperwork, or you just like get on the airplane and we never talk about it again. No pressure. Not what I want, not what your parents want, not what your friends want. What do you want? And I literally was laying in this bed in his kid's bedroom, just going like, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And I couldn't figure it out, because part of our story, I think that we shared, Janelle, is that growing up in a certain environment, we never learned to know what we wanted. That was just not part of our narrative. It was always like, what does the church want? What does Jesus want? What would Jesus do? All these questions that like, I just never learned to ask, like, or even know that deep voice, And so lean not on my own understanding. I mean, all that stuff was just so weaponized. And so I really stopped knowing how to hear that voice. So in the middle of the night, I drove to my parents' hotel. I called them and I was like, I can't stay here. I need to come to your hotel room. And my mom was like, all right. I think it was 1 a.m., honestly. I get in the car. I call my best guy friend. He happens to be up. We're chatting, and he said, how about if in the morning, whatever you want, like if you wake up in the morning and it's like, I don't want to do this. He's like, then we'll figure out something else. But if you wake up in the morning and you think, I want to do this, whatever comes out of your mouth first thing, you got to trust that that's your inner knowing. And I was like, all right. So I get to my parents' hotel room. My mom has a cup of tea. We drink a cup of tea. I don't even think we talk about it much. I lay down. I wake up in the morning. My dad literally rolls over. He's just looking at me. I said, I want her. And I knew in that moment that my whole life would be different, which is ridiculous because it's like a DIY project. How could that possibly change your whole life? But it's not an exaggeration to say it has, every bit of it. And so I drove over to my friend's house, told him I was taking it. I said, let's fill out the paperwork. He laughed. He sat down and handed me a filled out paper, like all the paperwork was done. And I looked at him and he said, I would never bet against you, Sarah Heath. He said, I've known since the moment you saw this trailer that she was yours. And I was like, okay. So I take the filled out paperwork. I get in the car. I feel these, like all these feelings, like this person believes in me so much. And I like open it up and I find a gift card for gas all along the way for me to drive from California to pick it up. Yeah. So that was really that pivotal moment of like waking up and trusting my gut. And it's been a wild ride for sure. I think that moment allowing myself, to say yes to that. I would say that moment, and then the moment of, actually saying yes to it. I think those are my pivotal
Wow.
moments.
So, do you think when you woke up in the morning, there was just this awakening to the whisper that was there all along? Like you had just, sometimes you know something, but it's like your mind is so much louder than your
Mm-hmm.
heart, and so there's this constant like tug of war where you're just at battle with yourself and being like, it's just like when you said like you were just burnt out. You just knew it was time for you to change vocations. Like it was just time. But there can be a long period of time where you sit in this limbo.
Oh, you can attest. You knew me then. From the moment I knew I wasn't supposed to be, this wasn't my forever job. And it's not that I don't know that I'll ever go back to it,
Mm,
which is a whole nother like thing that has been very surprising to me. Um, but in that moment, I think it was this humming.
yeah.
You've heard that before, like this humming inside. Um, it has been really interesting, Janelle. I, my friend is like a wonderful. She's actually a coach as well. My friend Heather. She about a year ago looked at me and said, like, "What do you
Mm,
know? Like, what do you know?" Because I was like, "I don't know if I'm doing this right thing." Da, 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 like, ah. And she said, "What do you know?" And I was like, I know that I want to finish Gidget. And she's like, great. And at the time, actually, I guess this was 2 years ago, because at the time, Gidget was still up in Bend and I was flying back and forth and driving back and forth. Um, and she said, okay, well, then let's bring her here because you're not going to finish her at this rate. So I was like, but how do I figure this out? And she's like, we'll figure it out. We were going to dinner that night with my friends who were like, oh, wow, I don't know how you'd figure out where to put her. We've told you we bought a house with the yard for this. Like, and like the guy I was dating at the time had a big truck. He was like, I will literally drive her. It was like everybody was like yelling at me. And I was this moment of like, okay, I'm bringing her
mm-hmm.
here. It's like that inner hum. And I've never had a day where I walk away. There are days when I'm like, what am
Mm-hmm.
I doing? But I've never doubted that. Like people are like, oh, do you want to sell it now that it's like it's not done in any way, shape, or form, but the shell is repaired in a way that I never thought, which is a whole nother story. Um, this thing that was once dented that most people
Yeah.
would have sold for parts is like starting to be beautiful. Like my friend whose yard it is in currently, she's like, people come by all the time and ask to buy her. And I'm like, that is new. That is not what a couple of years ago you would have been like, our HOA is calling. Can you please move this trash? Um, but I put my hand on the side of it all the time, on the side of her all the time. And I talk to this trailer and it is a strange, I don't know. It's strange to say that like, oh, this thing has helped me know myself better, but there's so many stories
Mm,
from her that are me and not
mm-hmm.
me in the church and not me in my
Yeah.
social setting. It's just, yeah, I've never questioned it, which is it was the right thing to do
Mm.
and I know that.
What's when you think back, how many years have you had Gidget?
So 2020 is when I bought her. So it'll be 5 years
Okay.
in
And that's
September.
when everything started to change with your job and everything. So
Big
what's one
time.
of the things that when you look back that you're surprised that you've learned on this journey and that's been like part of the everything changed for you?
Um this is like the woo woo part, but so for me, we have a friend Bradley who also does coaching, and when I was in my most chaotic of I don't know what to do because like I make it sound like I made the decision to leave my job and then I left. That's not what happened. I made the decision to leave and then I like held
Mm.
on with both hands and
Mm-hmm.
white knuckled it. Um, but Bradley was like, "There's this book I think you should read called The Surrender Experiment." Well, I was like working in the trailer, so I was like, "I'll listen to the
Okay.
audiobook." And it is this woo woo book about like surrendering and letting go. And anyone who knows me knows I am not, I like aspire to be chill. But I'm just like I'm so type A. I want everyone to think I'm not type A. Like I was at least very, I
Mm.
need to know the plans. I need to know what's next. And I would always, I hate change is what my guy friend, and my best guy friend, same guy, always says, like, you hate change, but you're so brave and bold that you'll change, but you hate it. Like, you are going to dig your fists in,
You can hold on as
you're
long
just
as you
going to be
can.
like, oh, the whole time. Yeah. I'm like, whoa, what if, I always, and reading that book and working in the trailer and having again and again things go wrong, and then it fixes in the most like, and I would have told you she'd be done by now. So I had to let go of the timeline. I had to let go of what I thought. I had to let go. So I feel like the thing that is most surprising to me is that it has taught me how to let go. And like, I always like call her my invitation. Like, she's the biggest invitation of my life. Like, every time I have to be like, okay, well, I'm going to work on this project, maybe, because I might get in there and like there's a Coke bottle that he literally used Coke cans as patching aluminum. So like you get in there, you're like, well, this is a whole day that's going to be different than I thought. And I think that's just been, that's been the biggest lesson for me. It's just, I had to let go. And I joke that I've been undenting her and myself at the same time. And there were hidden things in myself that had I never worked in this trailer, I never would have been uncovered. Because our brains are wonderful and they do great jobs of repressing things, and sort of just like, I feel like the permission to not know what I'm doing and just let it go.
That like true surrender.
And trusting. Like, it's so bananas. Like, I have trailer expert after trailer expert who's like, I would not touch that. And I'm like, well, here we go.
What did you find when you were going through that, when you were talking about the parallel between as you're undenting this place, this space, and undenting yourself? What, if you want to go into, like, what areas do you feel like you were undenting?
Yeah. So I discovered that I was a people pleaser because it kept me safe when I was younger. And it is funny because my body reacts. I cry without even controlling it because I don't have solid memories. But there is probably a situation from my childhood, and it's not my family, which I always have to tell people. But I was taken advantage of as a child, most likely, right? So the memories are very sketchy. They're very whatever. And in the process of undenting this, someone came into my life who helped me with the trailer, and really, like, his friendship and then also our interactions with each other kind of caused me to really start questioning some of the fears I had in my life and some of the control that I felt like I needed to hold on to, making me realize like something about this is keeping me safe, but keeping me away from like adult relationships. And I went into a profession where I could control, like there's nothing sexy about a female clergy member. And so I could control the male gaze, not the gaze, the gaze, like, right. Like I was seen as this, right. Like seen in a way that would keep me safe from the attention that was scary for me, without even aware of it. So that was the biggest dent, I think, that I had no idea. It affected every relationship, every friendship in some ways without me realizing it. And my brain did such a good job of, and like this trailer, how am I going to figure that out in a trailer? But I really have had this like self exploration because of it. Because I left my career, I was able to ask those questions in a bigger way. I was able to take the time. I was able to talk about my own sexuality, like as a woman, like a single woman. Like that was something that, like, no, you just are like a lady of the cloth. Yeah. That's what you are. So I think there was that part as well, just to like dig into that a little bit and gain a sense of safety. And so I think that's been the biggest one. And I this one of the first places I processed that in a public way, but that's been a huge process. It's been, I chose purity culture because it kept me safe from something I didn't even know it was keeping me safe from. And I grew up in a really safe family. So that's the scary part
Mm-hmm.
too, right? Like, so, it was an outside source and that sort of
Wow.
stuff.
That's interesting. Like you were talking about being in the church and how that was like a safety space for you. Like you didn't have to deal with like even go into those things. So it allowed you to almost be like in a like a cocoon, like safety in the sense is like you weren't even having to be maybe aware of that. And then how that surrender, like you said, and like just trusting the thing, which is just so hard. I think anyone listening to this can
Mm-hmm.
agree the fact that like listening to your heart is one of the hardest things to do because there's a lot of unknowns on the other side of that.
Oh,
It's just like how also, you know, and there's so many unknowns that you walk into or fears that you have about that change, like you said, and it's just so confining. And then when you trust it, like you said, like the surrender
mm-hmm.
experiment, and you're doing this thing and you're trusting, and that Gidget is so much bigger than just a space to recreate, but it's like recreating you.
Oh, you're using the right word. Right. It's like who's like recreating, creating. I love saying making space. Like I'm always making space, but realizing that the term I use at one point was like I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a human. Like I was, and I thought that kept me like
Yeah.
I was so lonely. But when I was working on the trailer, or when I was working in the church, you have to be above reproach. So any mistake, I just felt like I was, and what was deemed
Yeah.
as mistakes, right? Like what was deemed, especially as women, like the policing I did not only of my body, but the policing I did of my words and the policing I did of my image, to maintain this like non-human form. And the reality was like I was dying. I wanted to be able to make mistakes. People would say things to me. I'm like, I can't say things like
Mm-hmm.
that. I can't make a mistake in friendship because, and I still struggle with that today. Like my friends are constantly reteaching me that I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
be perfect. Um, and it's interesting. It took a really shitty Airstream to teach me like some of the dents were like this perfectionism I had. And, Truman, a man who I adore, the guy who works on my Airstream with me, he was the lead designer for Honda and Mazda. Like this guy is the guy who
That's
works on my
amazing.
Airstream with me, which is just like a crazy, crazy story in itself. He always says like, "Oh, we're just gonna get it to like this percentage of okay," and like when I had this vision of like this Airstream that I saw on Pinterest or Instagram, like it was gonna be perfect, but it's very fascinating to me because the way I see her is so different than
Mm-hmm.
the reality. Like I look back at pictures and I'm like, why the hell did you say yes to this? This thing is a piece of crap. But I see what it
Mm-hmm.
could be. And I don't even have the money to finish it, but somehow it will get finished. I keep working on it every
Mm-hmm.
weekend. Like I just trust that something's going to happen. And I think it's bananas. But in the same way that I had to trust that I could investigate myself and I wouldn't fall apart and I could be safe in my
Mm-hmm.
own body. It's just such a different than shame, like all the shame that came up, like having to work through that and like self-image and all that stuff. It's bananas to think that like a big, you know, burrito that goes down the freeway could cause you to have all these
Yeah.
thoughts.
But it's interesting, something you just said. You're like, it's like I could see that she could be something. And I wonder if like there's something in you
Mm-hmm.
that maybe that quiet whisper that was like, I can see something in you that you couldn't see in yourself. Like it's pretty incredible that you
Yeah.
looked at this piece and you're like, man, like this looks like junk, you know? And but you're like, no, I see something in her. And that's so interesting how your inner self is like, no, this is the thing, Sarah, you need to do. And I see something. Maybe there's that like voice is like, see something in you too. That's like this beautiful parallel in the whole story.
And it's not anything that's like necessarily like
Mm-hmm.
sexy and cool to anyone else. Like it's just like this like weird, like you try to tell people like, oh yeah, I spend my weekends with a dude in his 60s in overalls working on a underneath an Airstream. And I mean it might sound cool. But the conversations we had, we talked about grief this week. as we were working on stuff. And he's not a guy who like lives in his feelings, even though he's this incredible visual artist. He doesn't like to talk about things, and his friends passing away, and his brother is taking over the project and working on this car. And so it was finally time for me to share with Truman after almost 3 years of working together, for me to be like, Truman, this is why I have this Airstream. My friend passed away. And he was like, what? And we got into the whole, how do we work grief out of our bodies, and what does it mean? And why is this project something? Because he's like, you just keep showing up. And I think that's it too, is like showing up for myself, is part of it too. Like, it's not a project that has to make sense to anyone else. And it's not like I have a piece of property I'm going to be able to put her on. It's not like I have a truck that can pull her. There's like zero reasons why I should own this thing. And yet it just makes
Isn't that the best thing though, when you don't know? Like, I can think about, Greg and I were just having this conversation about different times in our life when like, this makes no sense. Anybody from the outside would be like, yeah, probably not a good idea. But when you lead with like people's opinions, or even your own noise in your head and not from your heart, it's like you miss out on the thing that you're calling you. And sometimes it's like, so like it's crazy, or it's scary, or it's like expensive, like you said, or like it costs you, like even us, like traveling the world made no sense. It didn't. But you do the thing that you feel like in your heart to do, and it just eventually over time you see, like I imagine it like being like, remember string art where you would kind of like wind it, like all the little like nails or little
and
then all of a sudden it's like done, like, oh yeah, that's amazing. I just kind of feel like life is like that when you trust those knowings, those intuitions, like the string art just comes to you like, oh my gosh, like look at this art, like look at like what life was, and just trusting and doing the thing. Like you said, when you say yes to something, it means you're also saying no to things, and that's okay. It's like, it's okay that you get to put yourself first and do the thing that you're supposed to do on the weekend, because it's calling you.
Yeah, it's this weird piece too that I think, I said there was like this other moment that was like, I realized everything had changed. When I drove up to Bend, when I left my job, I literally spoke at an event. My parents came with me. We drove 14 hours to Bend. And at the time, I thought this was a safe choice because my best girlfriend lived there, and I was going to live with her in her boyfriend's house, and we were just going to have, oh my gosh, we were going to have the best time. She ended up traveling for like a month of that, and then like also like she's an ER nurse. At the time she's a cardiac nurse, so she just did not have the time, and then switched jobs. Like it was like the craziest. Okay, so I get there and she's not going to be there for 3 weeks. So my parents had been with me, but they were staying, just for a couple days, and then I was going to be alone in this city that I like kind of knew because an ex-boyfriend lived there. I did have one other friend, April, who has been my absolute lifeline, but I remember I got in the room and I feel this heaviness. Like, what have I just quit a well-paying job with really great benefits to do what? To move in. I am at the time I was, just turned 40. What am I doing? And I look over, and there's nothing in the room other than like a bed stand and a bed. I have had a career. I like own furniture. I own a home elsewhere. Now all I have is like a bed and a nightstand. And on the nightstand is this card from my best friend, and the front just says, "Don't panic."
Wow.
and I was like, okay. And then it basically is like, this is the most proud I've ever been of you. This is the first time I've seen you choose you. And it was like, okay, all right. And I knew, I was like, I am panicking. She's right. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. And I think for so long, I thought fear meant don't do it. Because my body had done a great job of keeping me safe. However, it also did a great job of keeping me away from people. It did a great job of keeping me from being a human. It did a great job of making me incapable of deep connection in some ways. And so it was going to be painful, and it was going to be when you're dead, there's this moment when you're working with metal where if you hit too hard, too quick, it makes too much of a dent. Like it's too much of a thing. You have to find the exact right spot and hit with the right amount for it to stay. Otherwise it'll just go back to that dent and it'll be bigger. And I feel like that's kind of what, never really thought of this analogy before, but that's kind of what it is. It's like figuring out what I could tap on and not ruin the rest, right? Figuring out what I could fix without totally changing the way that it was. And then being okay that there's still what they call a scar on, so on metal, there's like scars, and you can't over fix something or it will stretch the metal. And so realizing, okay, this little scar that I can see, I know what it is. It can shine up, but it'll always be there. I think that's sort of a bit of my story as well, is like, I can shine up this stuff. I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. I can make this great. But it's still going to be there. And it doesn't mean it's wrong,
Wow.
Yeah. No, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't have to. And I think once you realize that it doesn't have to, there's also a freedom in that. But I think that like in a pastoral role, it's like a fishbowl life. People are all looking in, and there is this sense of like, not too much cleavage, not too much need, just like, you're kind of, in your freshly pressed every Sunday morning, and you go to give a hug. You're not there to receive one. It's a place where you are strong. So to let yourself be in a space where you're like, oh, I'm getting comfortable with the fact that like I can see the areas that I've just maybe forgotten or shoved or put away because there was no room for that part of you to be in your life, to emerge. There's so many unspoken expectations that come in that role, and that's one of them.
And the hard part is it's also some like really well-meaning people. Like I think about this like incredible people who, they've been so damaged by the church, and then I show up and they don't realize the expectations they put on me are not something like, I can't be perfect all the time. I can't be available all the time. I can't, but if of course we wouldn't want that of you, but we absolutely want that of you, And I think I thought I could build this thing and also get to be a human. And the truth was I couldn't, not in the way that I was then. I don't know if I could do it now that I have given myself a little bit more permission to be kind of be a crap human sometimes, to be a little done, to be like, yeah, I don't really like that. I'm really actually terrible at that. It's something like, you're not allowed to do that. When you're in ministry, it's like, you can't admit to being terrible at anything.
No. Or
unless you're a dude, then you get to say, oh, my wife really runs the church. The number of times I've heard that, I wanted to be like,
do you think there's,
can you imagine if I said that?
Imagine? Oh, sorry, he takes care of that. Do you think there's parts of your story, this transition, that people misunderstood about you?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because when you leave a job at like everyone thinks you're like killing it. I think people thought like, oh, she's going off to become famous. She's going off to like go tour, or she's going off to whatever. I think there was a lot of people who had, and I think maybe sometimes I had that notion like, oh, I can really pursue my creative stuff. And I didn't know like the creative stuff was like remaking myself, but I think there was that notion. I think some people misunderstood like that I was leaving. But really I just needed a break from here for a little while. And I think also there was the misunderstanding that it was a rejection of the community I'd been in. And it really wasn't. I just thought without me, they're going to flourish. Like if I stay, I might squelch it. I might it was almost like I was an impediment to them growing. It hasn't worked out like I had hoped that it would. There's been stuff I don't have control over, choices that were made by other people. That's been hard, because that's the other part too. I can't control the narrative, right? I can't control the narrative of why they shrunk after I left, right? I can't control the narrative of why they haven't been doing well. There's always that. And I have to constantly fight the battle. If I hadn't left,
Right.
it would have. But I would have been like burnt out. I don't think I ever would have gone to the deep therapy I went to. I don't think I never would have done the like fun, silly stuff, you know? And if I ever entered that world again, the boundaries would be so different now.
Yeah.
So different now.
But you have this different perspective and understanding as to who you were and who you become and like
Right.
what's important.
What's important is just exactly what I was going to say. Like my understanding of like, this needs to happen. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's changed a lot.
What are you, when you look back at like the journey and all of that whole season and even to what you're doing now with like coaching and all of those things, what do you look back and you're like, gosh, I'm really inspired by this thing that I did, by this segment in the journey? Is there something that stands out? You're like,
yeah. That's funny. This, I'm in a weird way. This even us reconnecting and even us having this conversation feels like just fits in with the rest of everything that's been happening around me lately. I shut down probably a year and a half ago for lots of reasons to really like creating any sort of stuff for public content. Some of it is the world in which we live is a really hard place, and I don't want to take away from the narratives that need to be heard. The stuff that's going on in Gaza, what's happening here in the United States. Like, there's so much stuff out there, and I was like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to take it on. I had this public persona. I needed a break from it. But I recently said to the therapist I've been working with, like, I miss me. I miss, because right now, like, my job is really, I work with United End Homelessness as a narrative strategist. So that means like I help them hone their strategy. I help our executive director with public speaking stuff, getting like, she's great at public speaking, but just like, helping make sure she gets on the certain stages and does certain things. And I love that, but it's not enough. It's not, I miss my own creation. I miss my own content stuff. So funnily enough, those 3 months I spent in Bend is getting all these invitations to like speak about creativity, to like get to do these like wild, like online things. And when I thought I was going to the woods to hide, like, I need you to understand that I had this like whole idea. I did date some firemen. I did the things that like you do in Hallmark movies, but I thought I was just like going to go disappear, but I didn't. And I was much more free. And I feel inspired by that time as I think back to like, oh, that felt like me. Like, there was something about being in that space where I wasn't as rushed. So my friend this morning popped by. He brought, actually, the other thing I'm drinking is coffee. He popped by, and I've been like milking it, like just nursing it. He stopped by early this morning, and he's going back up to Bend. He moved from here up to Bend, right? And Bend in many ways is like Canada. It's like home to me. The trees are similar to where we're from. The people are a little bit slower paced. They're skiing. I think weather that's difficult makes you a little bit more of a resilient person. Right now I'm in sunny California looking at a palm tree. There's just something about that. And him and I were sitting chatting on the thing, and I thought, I got all those feelings I had when I was there, that like sense of like wonder and creativity and inspiration, and looking at the mountains there makes me like feel so small and like I can create. So yeah, I look back on those times, especially because I was falling apart. I had no plan for the first time. I went straight from college to grad school to my first full-time gig to being made a lead pastor. Like, I did the thing, the trajectory all the way up, and you're right. And none of it was great. I mean, all of it was great, but book deals, speaking stuff. And so I should have been falling apart during that time. But I wasn't. And I think that's been a big teaching as well.
It's interesting, hey, how life just like surprises us sometimes. And we're taught something and we're like, I couldn't have seen that coming. Not the way it did.
Mm-mm. And even like, I'm just laughing because in this moment I noticed like, oh, Janelle's got a great microphone there. So do I. Like, I used to podcast all the time. I have this gorgeous microphone right here that my brain didn't even think to attach because like that's been so much a different part of me. Like, even that part of me is changing. And I feel like I'm about to enter back into that space, but I'm going to enter in it in a different way. Um, which is like it's kind of wild. Again, it's that whole having to say yes to some things means saying no. Like, I had to spend my weekends not editing podcasts, but literally like working on working on Airstreams, like literally having to figure out how to re-rivet something that I have no idea
So
about.
when you think about that and you're like, hey, I see parts of me coming back in, because I understand what you're talking about, that like unplug and that like really separation so that you can get acquainted with yourself. Because I've like lived in a world where there was so much doing. You just live from one I have to the next I have to. And when you can eject yourself from that, it's like initially the silence can be deafening because it's so uncomfortable and it's so foreign. And then when you get comfortable with that
Right.
and you're like, oh, like this is who I am.
Totally.
And I am still in there. And I do like this and I don't like that. And you just start to like become reacquainted with the girl that was just like stuck in a role of doing. And then there's
and the question of, do I matter when I'm
right.
not doing?
Right. Because I feel like a lot of times in life we're raised in this idea that productivity is valuable. So when you're doing something, when you're producing something, that's value. But the truth is just like it's such a lie that we get trapped in. We get so stuck in the wheel, the hamster wheel of going, going, going. When really it's like if your soul as well. Like can I be okay in a room with nothing else in it but silence? Am I okay with the girl inside? Like that's this amazing work that happens when you go through this transition when you're in the woods, when you're in your Airstream and you're just like it's silence and it's just you and some tools. Are you enough in that space?
And I don't have this, like, I don't know what I'm
Right.
doing necessarily. Like, I'm learning as I go, right? Like, everything is like a learn as I go. I haven't mastered
Right.
any of this. There is no part of this have I ever done before. And I think that's been really helpful lately to me, as well as this notion of like, I don't, I've never done this before, but no one has ever done this before. Different things like, you know, I, oh, I should do it the way they do it. No one's ever done what I do or how I do it. Or, I was listening to a podcast and they were like, oh, you talk to 3 people who are in your area who have done what you do, and then you do it the way they do it. And I was like, I don't know if that's actually true. Because the people I'm most inspired by are doing a thing that nobody ever did before. And they don't have to do it perfectly, right? Like, in fact, they like mess it up and they go back and they redo. And I think that's part of it too, is like, all right, like learning how to, like, no one's ever been Sarah Heath before. So I'm just like giving it a go.
Yeah. And you're doing it. And like to be comfortable with the fact of being a beginner at something. I was heard this girl talk about this a while ago. She was like, was in a profession for a long, long time. And then she's started a new, just like a side passion, but felt this immense amounts of angst about going into this space and like doing this new thing. And she's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like in my 20s, like I was doing all kinds of stuff and I wasn't thinking twice about it. I was like, yeah, I can do this. But she's like, I think there's something interesting about when you go through life, 20s, 30s, and you're in your 40s and you're accomplished at so many things that you've just done for so long that we haven't been beginners for a long time. And stepping into that beginner place can feel super uncomfortable and so unknown because we've been doing this for so long and now we're starting something completely new, and we have that anxiety or that antsiness when you go into that space being like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And but how great it is to be a beginner at something, how great it is to be like, I'm just going to figure this out in my own very Sarah way, you know? And it's just going to,
And letting go of like
yes.
perfection of, one of the things the biggest mistake I made in the very beginning was I started like asking in Airstream restoration Facebook groups, like, what should I do about this thing? Or what should I do about that thing? And everybody had opinions about how to do certain things. And they didn't all line up. And it was also this like, oh no, what if I post pictures? And I posted this one picture because I was looking for, I'm missing an M on my Airstream. And I was like, does anyone know where I can get this trim and this M? And this guy writes immediately, he's like, those are all cosmetic fix. You might want to look at your subfloor because it looks pretty bad. I was already planning on redoing the subfloor. And I was like, he's like, yeah, why don't we not start with the cosmetic things and realize you have major structural damage? And I was like, okay. And it made me I was so embarrassed that I posted anything. And I was also like, wait a minute. How does he not know I'm gonna like work on that? Like, I got defensive, I got upset, and I realized like, oh, like I'm gonna have to trust that I know the process, and at some point I'm just gonna have to pull the trigger on like, this is the thing I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
And it's been messed up. I messed up a lot. I used the wrong sealant on the plumbing, so I had this beautiful plumbing thing that just leaked everywhere.
What are you like when you talk about coming out, like coming into this new space where you're like, can feel like, even early on you mentioned like maybe you would go back to that vocation or whatever. What do you feel excited or like this rise inside you? This what do you know, Sarah?
What do I know? I have a sense that I have to tell the Gidget story in some way. Podcasting used to be a big part of my life, but it got really hard because I just didn't have a team of folks around me. And I'm trying to figure out how to create that thing in a way that is sustainable and like doesn't make it one more thing. So I think that's going to be part of it. I had this podcast called Making Spaces that I loved. I brought on a co-host. She was great, but like it wasn't what I had started with, and it wasn't the plan, and it was not the time for it. And so her and I had a long conversation, and then we shelved it, but it's still my thing, and it was still in my name. And then someone from ABC came along and did a podcast called Making Space. And I'm like, no, that was and it was like almost exactly my format, the whole thing. But she had ABC money, so it was a little different. So I think like I want to return to that because it's that notion of like, what do I love to do is make space for people. And I want to help be part of how we bridge some of these divides we've created. I don't necessarily agree with people who are like, if I don't agree with you, I need to cut you out of my life. It's not healthy for me. I think we are in the situation we're in because a lot of people feel unheard, rightfully or wrongfully, somewhat wrongfully. But I think we need to, if we're going to move forward, it's going to take all of us. And we can't just say, hey, you guys that have been so offensive and terrible in the past, you have to just sit out. This just makes them louder and angrier. And I feel like there has to be some of us who are willing to stand in the gaps. And so that's, I feel like, and I might get a lot of flack for it, and people may not agree with me, and people I really love and respect might say, absolutely not, these are garbage people. That's it. And I just don't believe in that. And so, I just I just read this like thread that was like someone who was angry at like Glennon Doyle and Mel Robbins and all these people and and I was like, oh, I don't want to step into that world if that's how they talk about people. But the truth is like, I can only just be me and control how I feel about me. And that's taken a long time to build, and it's not fair totally, but it's getting there. So that excites me. It excites me to like think about being back in that creative world. I am, for the first time in a long time, considering like, where do I want to spend the next 45 years of my life? Kind of like you guys did. Because I love it here, but I'm so far from my family. And the other place I love is also far from my family. And so what do I do about that? There's a lot of questions I have around that. So
that's life, right? There's so many questions, and it's just like trusting, like you said earlier on, just like trusting the knowing and just like letting that be your guide, and letting the doors open as they do, and just walking through and being okay with not knowing. That, I think that's the part about this life, when you're just like, I'm just really going to surrender and just lead with, my intuition, with this whispers from within. It can feel very unknown, and that can be rattling because you just want to plan, you know. But there's something beautiful in just like trusting that process. If you could go back and tell your 5 year ago 2020 self something, what would you want her to know about the going forward?
I think that she's going to figure it out. Like, you're going to figure it out. And I probably would tell her to be bolder about talking about things. I probably would. I don't know. But I think the anxiety I had around figuring out how, like, I was going to figure out what my next job was, how I was going to, like, you're going to figure it out. And that there are a lot of things that you're going to work through that you never thought you'd work through. Fears that you thought you'd have forever that you're not anymore. And I think I would also like let her know that Tenor, my dog, was still going to be around. I have a 16-year-old dog, and he is the coolest thing. And back then I was so worried that every moment was my last moment with him, which is kind of a gift because I like enjoy everything about this stupid, silly dog. And it, he's been with me this whole way. I think if I had known that, that would have felt really good to know, like, oh, Tenor's going to be with me. And that idea of like, you're going to figure it out, and it's going to take longer than you think. But I think God would just let her know that we're okay. We turn out okay. Things don't turn out the way we thought. I would have told you 5 years ago that I was fixing things so quickly. I'd be in a healthy partnership, and I had several partnerships since then, and none of them worked out. The guys it has not worked. And I think I would be disappointed about that, but I think also just letting that be what it is.
Letting that be what it is. I like that. Before we like cap up our time together, I wonder if there's something that you would want somebody who is maybe treading through a similar path, whether they're like feel like a big change coming, or there's something going on, or they feel a nudge from within. If there's anything you'd want them to know, if they're sitting in a space where they're like, dang, I get this girl.
Yeah. I think that we tell ourselves that we're going to be alone in it, whatever it is. But the right people show up. And sometimes you're even the right person for yourself. That this thing that you feel, this nudge, if it's bringing about good in the world, and that's, I think, the metric of it, if it's bringing about good in the world, then it is this beautiful thing that can be born. And I think if you can figure out a way to trust that, like I said, the right people will show up, and sometimes you're going to be that right person. I think it changes. I think someone once said to me, like, if you can't let people know all of you, they only love a version of you that isn't actually loving you. It's when you can be like fully yourself that people can actually love you. I feel like my friends who have known me through all this, like my friend April up in Bend, like, she knows me, and she also thinks like there are things that are really shitty about me, and we've been honest with each other about it. And I feel like for so long I didn't want anyone to see those parts of me, the real anxious parts of me that cycle, or I freak out about things. And she's actually just sat in it with me and been like, all right, we're gonna have a freak out, you're gonna be fine. And sometimes I've had to be the one to tell myself that. So I think if you feel this nudging in yourself, just like the notion that it's going to be okay, and the notion that you aren't going to be alone in it is important, I think.
That's great. That's really great, because I think a lot of times we are afraid because we don't want to walk alone, and because our stories can feel isolating.
Oh, and we were told that, like, for us, like for those of us in church settings, like we were told, like, people who are outside of church structures are isolated and alone, and this is the place where you get community. And so the idea of stepping away held so much fear because it also meant stepping away from safety of community and things like that.
Totally. Wow. I really have enjoyed this conversation and hearing about where life is taking you and what is happening and the courage that you've had along the way, and you've had to step into like new, unfamiliar spaces and trusting that like sweet whisper from within. It's beautiful. Before we cap up, what is bringing you joy in your life right now?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think the thing that is bringing me joy right now is just really this like notion that, like I said, that something new is around the corner, but that I can enjoy where I am right now. This is the like littlest thing, but every morning I take my dog really early in the morning. We go for these long walks, and I'll just pause and be so grateful for this space I'm in, for this beautiful place I get to live for right now, for the chance to have that time in the morning. And it brings me, like, it starts my day in this really peaceful way. And it helps me sort of prepare for the day. And it's just been bringing me a lot of joy.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, unless you have anything else, you're like, I just have one more thing to say, which is the floor is yours if you do.
Just one more thing. No.
It's been...
No, I mean, I think, this has been such a fun conversation, and also like, a little bit of practice of being self-revealing.
Totally. I know it. Well, I am so glad we got a chance to do this and for you to be here with the Naked community and to share your journey and your story. I think it's exactly what you're talking about. What this podcast is about. People realize that they're not alone, that somebody else has gone through something similar, that our stories have a lot of parallels in them, and the angst and the feelings and the questions are so similar from one to another. And so it's just this idea of us allowing us to be naked, to talk about the things we maybe don't talk about, but that many of us are feeling. So I am honored anytime someone says yes, and to join me here, to be vulnerable, to be transparent. And honestly, thank you so much.
Oh, of course. It was my pleasure, for sure.
Yeah, we got to do this more often, actually. It's been about 5 years, I think.
That's garbage.
All right. Well, have an amazing rest of your day. And thanks again for being here. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us and for being a part of the podcast, for listening, for sharing, for just, tuning into the voices that are here. I want to thank you so much for being here, for taking the time to listen to the Naked podcast. It honestly means so much. If there's something in the episode that has moved you, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And if you haven't already, give us a follow and leave a review. It helps so much to keep the momentum and keep the show growing. For more conversations, reflections, and ways to stay connected, check out the link in the show notes. Until next time. If you would like to connect with us or possibly share your story, please contact us at nakedwithjanelle@gmail.com. That's nakedwithjanelle@gmail.com. Thanks so much. Thanks to my son, Mikkel, who is the one behind every podcast. He does all the producing and editing and makes this show happen. If it wasn't for him, all of these would be stuck in my computer and you would not get a chance to hear them. So I am forever grateful for his help and partnership in the Naked podcast.